How y'all doing on this fine Friday night? I'm excited to be here. If you don't know me already, my name is Derek Day and I wear many hats, sometimes too many. Um, but my partner in crime, Aaron Tomlinson, isn't with me tonight. He's under the weather. So y'all keep Aaron in prayer, send him good vibes and well wishes, whatever floats your boat. Now, last couple of times that I've been on here, I've been talking about things that are political or economic and so on and so forth, and I'm not going to talk about that today. So before I get started, I'm just going to let you know because one of the things that I do is I drink while I broadcast. So I got some Bullet Bourbon and I have some Fever Tree Light Ginger Beer, and essentially making a diet mule. But I have a question for you. I have a question, simple question. Can we talk? Can we be real? And for those of you who know me, you know that I'm pretty well guarded. I play things in my personal life close to my vest because what I'm doing, what I'm going through, or whatever ain't nobody's business but mine. But one of the things that I do know is that when you're building a bond with people who you don't know personally, an easy way to do that is through transparency. And so last weekend was a really good weekend. My older sister Sandy came down to Austin. My wife and I we went down there, hung out with them for the weekend, and and we talked. But there was a moment. There was a moment when my brother Brian and I went to the liquor store. And funny things happen on the way to the liquor store. And and it was this. We were talking about our mom's passing last year. Late last year. Our mom, Shirley Day, she passed away, 85 years old. She lived a full life. And I want to say that she pretty much went out on her own terms. So Mom, I salute you wherever you are. But I was angry, bitter, that there were people who I expected to show my mother love that didn't. And I know how she'd been 10 toes down for so many people. And yet, when it was time for her to be honored, respected, venerated, a lot of these people didn't show up. And so my brother Brian and I, we were talking about this, and we were talking about our anger over this. But for me, it cut deeper. It cut deeper, and y'all hear me. I have a really good memory, and give you a little taste of that. My mother moved us from Decatur, Illinois, to Detroit, Michigan, on July the 3rd, 1967. This is in the middle of the riots that were going on in Detroit, or is that kind of at the tail end of it? But anyway, the riots were going on because there was a tank parked in front of my grandparents' house. I never forget that. And the tank treads are still in the asphalt, the imprint of the tank treads. But anyway, I can remember that I had on a red T-shirt and blue jeans. They would call them dungarees back then, and some kid sneakers. My brother Brian had on blue jeans as well, but he had on a blue T-shirt, and my sister Michelle had on a sundress. And I remember all of this. I remember my uncle Bob came down to Decatur from Detroit with a U-Haul trailer hitched up to his brand new 1967 Pontiac GTO in aqua blue with a black top. I still remember how the inside of that car smelled because GTOs back then, they used real wood. It was teak on the dashboard, and that teak imparted a certain smell to the interior of the car. And I remember all of that like it was yesterday. And I remember packing the car, and I remember looking out the back window of this car and watching the trailer, but looking to see my house disappear in the background. And we came to Detroit. And let me tell you, I fucking hated Detroit. And let me say this, right? I really don't have a whole lot of love for Detroit. And y'all people from Detroit, don't send me hate mail, because I had a lot of good experiences, met a lot of good people, did a lot of cool things. But for the most part, from the time I got to Detroit on July the 3rd, 1967, I was trying to get out. And everybody who knows me knows that. I was trying to get out. And it is having this good memory because people say, "Oh, Derek, you know, if you want to know something about what happened way back when, ask Derek because he knows, he remembers." And I do. And I do. I have near perfect recall of things that happened way back in the Wayback Machine. Now, here's the problem. And when you remember that well, it's hard to forget. It's hard to forget. For example, I remember the day that my grandmother died, and she died at the house of a friend of hers. And I'll never forget that we got the call. We went over to the house, and they had her laying in one of the beds in one of the bedrooms. And she looked like she was sleeping. She's 54 years old. I remember it like it was yesterday. I remember the funeral. I remember everything. I remember everything. I remember everything that happened. I remember how people behaved at the funeral. I remember things that people said after the funeral. So you say, okay, Derek, you got a great memory. So where the fuck are you going with this? Where are you going? Well, this is where it gets interesting because I found out, and y'all listen. There's my friend and partner, Aaron Tomlinson. Aaron has done a lot of teaching on shadow work. And if you haven't checked it out before, I highly encourage you to do so. I highly encourage you to check it out. And I highly encourage you to do the work because there is shit that lives in your shadows. I mean, and understand this because we are light beings. We cast light, but we also have a shadow. The shadow is the evidence of light interacting with us. So you can't get rid of your shadow. This is important. This is a very important thing when we start talking about shadow work because people say, "Oh, well, you take all that stuff that's in the dark recesses and you sweep it out." No, you can't do that. But what you have to do is you have to recognize that it's there. You have to recognize that it has some bearing on your life. And what I realized this weekend, 63 years old, I realized that in many ways I have been broken. I have been broken. I've been lied on, stolen from, cheated on, uh, physically, mentally, spiritually abused. I've gone through some shit in my life. And here's the problem with having a good memory and having gone through this because it's hard to forget. Because people will tell you, and I'm going to tell you, when people just say, just get over it, Derek, just get over it. When they tell you that, they are either intentionally or unintentionally gaslighting you. Because you don't just get rid of it. You don't get rid of it just like people don't get rid of food disorders or addictions like smoking or drugs or alcohol. You just don't, it doesn't just happen. There is a process to it. And because of this process, you have to honor the process, and people who know you and love you and know what you've been through, they too will honor the process. They won't just tell you, well, just get over it. As my friend Henry Harris says, go to Lowe's and buy a ladder and get over it. It doesn't quite work that way. Uh, Brokenness is a very serious thing. I mean, it can be brought on by different types, different kinds of trauma. But what has to happen is that you have to either find a way to put the pieces back together again, or to live that out and understand how to embrace the brokenness. That's hard. That is hard. So I've learned some coping strategies over the time of my life. And one of them was what I call displacement thinking, just like how a boat displaces water in order to float. You have to build something that displaces the negative. In other words, the ship in the water doesn't get rid of the water, it just simply moves it out of the way a little bit so that it can move. So, likewise, you have to move things out of the way in order to move forward. And just like how a ship displaces water, you displace negative thinking. Now, granted, there are some things that are easier to put behind than others. But there are some things, and this is where it gets challenging. This is the challenge, right? Uh, oh, and one more thing about shadow work, I got to give a shout out to my buddy Carl Forehand also, because Carl also is big into shadow work, and I've learned a lot from him as well. But what you have to do is you have to find the things, the traumas, the hurts, the pains, the injuries that lurk in the shadows. And this is not to say to bring them up so that you're living in them, because that the one thing that you don't want to do is you don't want to live through brokenness. And what I found this weekend is that that is exactly what I've been doing. And the problem with this is that I brought a lot of this trauma, a lot of this pain, a lot of this anger, a lot of this hurt. I brought it forward with me into other relationships. I brought it into work relationships. I brought it into my marriage. I brought it into a lot of things, and it's not good. Now, I've said this before, and I'll say it again for the sake of those of you who are hearing this for the first time, is that everybody has a bag. I like James Brown used to say, Papa's got a brand new bag. Everybody's got a bag. And given a sufficiently long enough timeline, everybody is coming out of their bag. Everybody. Everybody. It's just a matter of time. And whatever's in that bag is what's going to come out. And there are some people, and I've met some people that they have led what I call a charmed life. They have gone through things, but they haven't gone through things in such a way that it had a lasting or a permanent impact on them. And so when they come out of their bag, people like that, when they come out of their bag, it's like rainbows and unicorns when it comes out of their bag. You get what I'm saying? It's like these people are happy people. And so because they're happy and they're healed, or let's say they're healthy, not necessarily healed, because there's a difference between being healed and being healthy. Being healthy is like where you haven't endured a trauma, or you've totally rehabilitated and gotten beyond that. Being healed is to have some attention given to an injury or an insult or something that has harmed you and or hurt you in some way. So there's a difference between being healthy and being healed. It's a difference. When you're healthy, again, it's like you haven't gone through anything, or you've gone through it and you've done the shadow work, you've been through rehab, you've been through therapy, whatever it is, and now you're walking in sunshine. But that ain't everybody's testimony. So I want to ask you, what do you deal with? When I was a child, there were people who said that me, my brother, and my sister would never amount to anything. And yet, here we are, all college educated professionals and doing pretty well for ourselves. My mom left an awesome legacy through her children, her grandchildren. There were people. There were people who said that I was arrogant, that I was too high on myself, and that God was going to come and knock me down a peg. And I heard all of these things. I mean, because I was an observant child. You know how some kids, you think you call them nosy because they dip into grown folks' business. Well, I wasn't dipping. I just heard. I had ears, and when I heard something, I'd perk up and listen. But I'm happy to say that I have actually addressed most of these individuals individually and let them know you were wrong. Which brings me to my next point: dealing with trauma and brokenness. Because see, I'm ex-military, and I've done some interesting things in my military career. Some I can talk about, and some I can't. Uh, but one of the things that let me say this, that my tendency to anger served me well in a military capacity. It was also a hindrance in a lot of ways, but um, I had two methods of dealing with people who hurt me. Number one was just ignore them, put as much space between them and me as possible. The second was vengeance. And there's a problem with vengeance. There's a real problem with vengeance. It's that vengeance feels pretty good. It feels good to make someone hurt like you hurt. But that pain is like cocaine. It feels good when you're doing it. But down the road, there are some repercussions, there are some consequences to it. And you cannot create lasting solutions in violence or vengeance. It just doesn't work. The solutions are temporary, they are vain, and they're just as harmful to you as they are to the person who you're doing harm to. Can we talk? Can we talk? This is not an easy conversation for me to have. Like I said, I like my privacy. I'm a public person in the sense that I'm gregarious, that I like to share my thoughts and my opinions publicly, and I've been blessed to have a platform to do that. But my private life, I tend to keep pretty private. But I'm sharing something here with you because I'm hoping for two things here. One is that I'm preaching to myself, that when I preached as a Christian pastor, I always made sure that the message that I was preaching resonated with me first. That I had to preach to myself first. Because if it did not resonate with me, if it didn't minister some spiritual balm to me, if it didn't do anything to make me a better person, I always say that that if you're if your default mode is harm, then your resting mode should be silence. That if all you can do is hurt or harm, to detract or insult, if that's all you can do, best thing for you to do is be silent. Now, I had to learn that the hard way because um, I have a sharp tongue and a very good command of the English language, and I know how to say things that can really cut to the heart of a person. Likewise, I'm the kind of person that kind of wears my heart on my sleeve. So there are certain things that, you know, people can say that cut me to the quick. And it's tough. But I want to talk about injury and trauma for a minute, because one of the things that happens is that when you have been injured or traumatized in a certain way and you haven't completely healed from that, you have not been rehabilitated, you have not done the shadow work, then what happens is that kind of hangs sword of Damocles, if you will, over your head. It's a weapon that's poised to fall on you. So one of the things that I've learned is that when you experience trauma, when you experience hurt, that you first have to deal with that. You have to deal with that. You have to figure out how to deal with this. And let me tell you something else, is that one of the things that I've been blessed with is that I've had friends that have lasted a long time. My longest friendship is 62 years. 62 years. And me and my oldest friend have been friends. We're more like brothers. I mean, because this has been a nonstop, unbroken friendship. And he knows me as well as anyone. And sometimes he'll hear me say something and he'll pull me off to the side and say, D, no, you can't do that, right? You can't do that. Now, mind you, this cat is also somebody that you don't want to fuck with. He ain't the one. And I posted that earlier this week because, and that's the other thing too, is that I have a bad tendency to wear this on my sleeve. I ain't the one. I'm not the one to be fucked with. And so when you do that, you kind of put up this facade that you're trying to invoke fear in people, fear in how they approach you, fear in how they talk to you, fear in how they deal with you. And one of the things you don't want to do, you don't want to live in fear, but you also don't want to project fear. You want to be the person that people gravitate toward, that people trust and they honor, that they love. And when I look at the arc of my life, I say, the the times when I was happiest is not when I was feared, but when I was loved. Now, again, making people fear you, there is a perk to that, and that is that it feels good. But again, like I said before, it feels good like heroin feels good. Heroin it feels good for a minute. It may numb the pain of some of the things in your life, but at the end of the day, it's going to destroy you. And that's how vengeance, that's how anger, that's how hanging on to stuff. And let me say this first of all, that your pain has to be honored. First of all, you have to honor it. You have to honor your pain. You have to say, yes, this is something that I deal with. This is something that I've gone through. But you recognize that it's there, and the people that love you and the people who are closest to you, that they too will honor that. They'll say, I see your pain. I feel your pain. It's like when I was having this conversation with my brother Brian, man, we cried. We cried like babies, man. I had to pull the car over and just cry. Why? Because he said, I feel your pain. I feel your hurt. And he said, and I have some hurt too. I have some trauma. I have some things that are unhealed. I have some things that, and Brian, I'm not saying this to put you out on the spot, bro. I love you. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying this for the sake of this discussion, and I'm trying to be transparent here. Um, but I've actually been through therapy a couple of times in my life, and I can honestly say that when I've submitted myself to the therapeutic process of psychotherapy, that it has worked for me. Now, is it going to work for everyone? I can't say that. I'm not a psychiatrist. And even if I were, I still don't think that I could say that. Because, as I want to say often, is that your mileage may vary. It may be completely different for you than it is for me. Can we talk? Can we talk? Can we be real? Because when you have been stolen from, it makes it difficult for you to have trust to do business. When you have been cheated on, it makes it difficult for you to have meaningful relationships, meaningful, intimate relationships. It makes it difficult. It's challenging. So when you're dragging this bag along, and like I said, for some people, it's as light as a fanny pack. For others, it's like the Santa Claus of pain. That, friends, brothers, and sisters, I, this is where I am. I have enough hurt in my bag to last several lifetimes. But what I'm learning now, and it took up until last weekend for me to actually get this, is that I can keep holding on to this and let it sabotage my future, or I can deal with it. And so I've chosen to deal with it. I'm not going to be defined by the hurts of my past. Now, let me make one thing clear. If you have been hurt, if you've been wounded, I'm going to sound like one of these, personal injury attorneys here. If you've been hurt, uh, you deserve compensation. Now, in a best case scenario, the person who hurt you didn't do it intentionally and will exercise some contrition and be sorry for what they did. That's a best case scenario. That's like, that's gravy if that works out. But sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the people either don't know that they hurt you, or they hurt you and they don't care that they hurt you. Now at that point you have a choice. You can say, okay, you know, I'm gonna hold this against them. Any opportunity I get them to hurt them, I will. And you could do that, or you can exercise some displacement thinking. Um, I don't want to hurt people with the wounds of my past. See, when you're not healed from the wounds of your past, you bleed on everyone else going forward. And I don't want to do that. What the last thing that I want to do is to be a source of trauma for someone else. I want to do that. So, uh, again, displacement thinking. So, part of that begins with mindfulness, and you stop and just take stock of yourself. Take a deep breath in and release it. Now, how do you feel when you do that? How does that make you feel? If you're alive, it should make you feel pretty alive. To take in a large quantity of air and to exhale a large quantity of carbon dioxide and other gases that are trapped in your body feels good. Another thing is to take stock of your surroundings. Sometimes it's good to get out in nature. One of these tropes of social media is like, you need to go out and touch some grass. Well, touching some grass is a good thing. Take your shoes off, go barefoot and walk in the grass. Get grounded. Release the negative current that's in your body. Take in the positive current of the earth. Recharge yourself. Another thing that you can do is to tell yourself, like, say, 5 good things about yourself. 5 good things. And then talk about maybe 5 things that are about you that you want to change, things that you may not think are so good. Then there's also physical exercises, exercise in general, taking walks, working out, things like that. That's good. That's a good way of displacing negative thinking. Another thing is reading and or listening to positive material. One of the things that I'm doing, I'm big on this right now, is I'm listening to audio books. I'm reading books about manifestation, about mindset rehabilitation, because I don't want to dwell on negative things. I don't. I want to accentuate the positive and eliminate the negative. I forget which old Disney movie that came from, but maybe it's Jungle Book. Accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative. So y'all help me out on that. But anyway, you follow what I'm saying. You focus on something in life that you really want, or something that you really want to do. And last but not least, if you have a trusted confidant, a trusted advisor, someone who will listen to you without judgment, and someone also who will not, because if sometimes trauma is caused by people, or you're going through something with people, don't go to people who are going to, when you talk about this person, that they're going to pile it on. Don't do that. Because one of the things that you can do is that you can wind up doing things that enforce or reinforce what it is that you're feeling bad about somebody to begin with, and you don't want to do that. So I have this thing, I I have a few trusted advisors, and when I say a few, I'm talking about on the fingers of one hand, that I can reach out to and say, hey, this is what I'm going through, and they'll be like, all right, and they'll give me some positive feedback on how to process this. And you have to be careful. Let me say this. I cannot stress this enough. You have to be careful who you share your trauma with. because one of the things that can happen is that people get trauma bonded, where you begin to develop a relationship with someone based on the trauma, and that does nothing to relieve the pain. It does nothing to heal the hurt. It does nothing. All it does is it amplifies it, and you don't want to be there. Everything that you do should be to either mitigate or silence the hurt, not amplify it, not accentuate it, not dwell in it. You can't talk to everyone. Now, here's the other thing too, is that when you talk to someone, you will know the honesty in which they operate when you say, I'm going through it. And they say, brother, sister, your pain is valid. And I empathize with what you're going through. Now, if somebody says, well, are you going to remember this 5 minutes from now? Is this going to matter a year from now? Just get over it. Just let it go. Let it go. And and I'm going to tell you something. I've seen so many people who were addicted to different things. They were addicted to sex, addicted to nicotine, addicted to heroin, addicted to crack cocaine, addicted to methamphetamine, addicted to alcohol, addicted to, exercise, the exercise junkies. I've seen people deal with some addictions, and people say, oh, well, you just need to let that go. And you know what happens? They try. And then, as your Bible says, you get rid of that one spirit, and that spirit brings back 7 more even stronger. You got to be careful who you share your trauma with. You got to be careful. You just can't share it with everyone. And the other thing too is that there are people who are opportunistic based on opportunities granted. So it may be someone who otherwise would not have done anything to take advantage of you, but because they catch you in a vulnerable spot, you have revealed a vulnerability to them. They say, now I see a weakness that I can exploit for my own gain. And you got to be careful about who you talk to. Back in World War II, they said loose lips sink ships. And that is a fact. And those ships can be friendships, relationships, fellowships. You can sink some ships with the wrong talk. The other thing too is that a lot of times we say, I need to get along with my own thoughts. No, I would say that somewhere close to, I can't really say that. Let's just say a lot of people who choose to take their own lives do so after being alone with their thoughts. Listen, if a thought is so pervasive, it is so prevalent, if it is so powerful that you cannot escape it, and you think that by going to be alone with that thought that is somehow going to help you, that's like going into a secret room with a predator. You just don't do that. Your thoughts can be predatory and definitely harmful. Sometimes your thoughts mean you no good. Let me say that again. Sometimes your thoughts, that's you, your thoughts don't mean you well at all. Listen, if nobody else gets this, I'm preaching to myself, and I'm preaching myself happy, because here's the thing. I understand now, and let me say this too, that a lot of times we try to guard ourselves so we don't get hurt. and you do things you to build walls or to create boundaries that may or may not be valid. And let me say this, that when it comes to people hurting you, there's nothing that you can do to stop someone from hurting you. Ooh, that stings. Because a lot of times you think, well, if I do this, I tweak this, restrict this, or curtail this, or watch this, that somehow I'm going to keep this person from doing something to hurt me. But it doesn't work. And so you can build boundaries, and you can say, hey, listen, I'm not, this is something I'm not going to tolerate. I'm not going to go through this anymore. But you can't keep rehashing it. And I'm going to tell you something, because I have this long memory, that's something that I have a tendency to do. I have a tendency to hold on to, or to rehash things and play mental movies. And when those things happen, it's like, if you go to a movie that you don't like, what do? You get up and leave the theater. Why? Because there's no point in sticking around for something that you're not going to like, or that it's like some people don't like scary movies, and if you go to see a movie and this happens to be really really scary, and you like that, this is going to give me nightmares, and you decide to stick it out and go through the whole thing, well, you've just self traumatized, because you had the opportunity to get up and leave. You could exercise free will and say, no, enough of that. I've seen enough. Adios, player. So you got to um, be careful of who you talk to and what you're hearing. And again, like, people will take advantage of you. I mean, it's like, I've known people that when someone is going through a traumatic situation, they wind up abusing someone sexually, or they abuse them financially, or they abuse them spiritually, because they see an opportunity. And this is not to say that the people are bad, but it's like, people sense opportunity. It's just like investing. It's like, if you see the opportunity where a stock goes very low, and you know that it's going to come up, and your instinct tells you that, and you jump on it. It's the same sort of thing, except it's doing something to harm. And while I'm here, I want to say this: the Hippocratic Oath is a good place to start in life. First, do no harm. Don't make sure that what you do, run everything through the filter of, will this hurt person A, B, or C? Will this hurt them? Because if it will, and I have the ability, and I have no gain by doing this, I have nothing to gain by doing this, don't do it. And even if you do have something to gain from it, but that gain comes at the expense of one of these people, don't do it. Just don't do it. Don't do it. I you know I really want to know what you guys think. I mean, I've been talking for a minute, and I've tried to take breaks. I'm going to put the link for the show out here, um, and if you are so inclined, you can join in. I'm also going to go out to Facebook here, and let's see what we have going on here. And I should have this video going. And I'm going to say join in. Yeah. So that's another thing too, is that I think uh, now I still have to do it later, because I know it's probably like set to friends of friends instead of public. So anyway, if you see this, and something encourages you or blesses you, please feel free to share it. Because I really think that this is helpful. Mm. And And again, one of the things I don't want necessarily for people to, this is not a psychoanalysis session, not a counseling session by any stretch of the imagination. So when I ask you, like, hey, if you feel the unction to share anything, feel free. But understand this: I'm not judging. I'm not analyzing. I'm not looking to exploit. What I'm doing is I'm looking to help, and I'm looking to share something, that share a very personal part of my life with you, in the hopes that you may get some relief from something that has been causing you pain. That's it. That's it. Because one of the things that I tell people is that you want to discover your why. What is your purpose? What is it that you feel like you can do uniquely? Something that you can do that will contribute to the betterment of humanity. So when you discover your why, everything else in your life begins to line up with that. That becomes your singular core value. And for me, that why is, how do I help someone today? I ask myself this every day. What can I do to help someone better their life today? And when I lay my head down to go to sleep at night, I ask myself again, what did I do to make life better for someone? And if I wasn't successful, if I can't, apply a SMART goal, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound, if I can't apply a SMART filter to that, then I'm back to the drawing board. What can I do? And what do I do tomorrow instead of today? Or what can I do today instead of yesterday? What can I do to be better? So I said, not what can I do tomorrow, because at the end of the day, the only slice of time that you have the title deed to is right now. Yesterday has been sold or foreclosed on, and tomorrow has not been attained or achieved. But right now, you completely own that. And what you do in your right now has everything to do with what the next moment will be and how the last moment will be processed. So, so we talked about trauma. We talked about trauma bonds. We talked about shadow work, and also I would encourage you, and if you want to get heady, that you go back and you read some books by Carl Jung. And Carl Jung invented, well, he didn't invent it, but he gave words to the concept of the shadow self, and how our fears, our hurts, our traumas uh, often live in those shadows, and those shadows manipulate you. And you have to understand how that works. People say, they'll say someone is afraid of their own shadow. Well, it's because the light passing through their light being casts an outline of themselves in relief on some surface, and some people will see that shadow and be like, you know, I want you to learn to not be afraid of your shadow. And again, if you want to learn more about this, like I said, study the works of Carl Jung, but also go back and listen to some teachings from my friend and brother Aaron Tomlinson. Go read or listen to some things that were done by my friend Carl Forehand. I mean, these are just two people that I can think of that I know who have dealt extensively in shadow work. But I'm not going to keep you long. I've talked for almost 50 minutes now, and I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up because I got a beautiful wife that I want to go and spend some time with, and I'm going to do that. But I wanted to make sure, and let me just say this for the record, that this has been cathartic for me. This has been healing for me because um, I didn't know how much hurt I was carrying around, and having a good memory just really adds to that because it's like bad things that are happening to you, you just can't forget them, and a lot of times when you can't forget, you can't forgive. And let me say this about that. This is really important. This is very, very important. Is that it's, to um, it's great to forgive. They say, the old saying is that to err is human, to forgive is divine. You can forgive, but you don't have to forget. But when I say remember, file it away like a library card, like a Dewey Decimal card. I don't know how many of you are old enough to remember old library cards where you had to go to the card catalog and search for books. You file it away like the card catalog. The card is not the book, just like the map is not the territory. And until you go and pull it out, it's hidden. But even though it's hidden, doesn't diminish its value at all. So that being said, I want to tell you all, for those of you who do know me well, I want to thank y'all for rocking with me for as long as you have. You have been a blessing. To those of you who I met through social media, I want to thank you and uh, helping me be a better person. And then last but not least, I want to thank my wife Maya and my brother Brian, my sister Sandy, my sister Michelle. I want to thank them for helping me process some of these things. But I feel better. Hope you do too. Hope you have a great weekend. Be happy, be well, be filled with peace.